Who? Sarah's here somewhere. We're gonna start with Martina. Jonah said every third book has to be a non.
Okay. It's like a Lord of the Rings. Okay.
But I'm only gonna read the two first books and not the third.
When Cliff Notes that one.
I'll put those out. We got time to waste on it's silly educational knowledge. Here you jumped out of town.
I read the excerpt.
It's not the entire book. It's
Check one, two. Take whatever this is.
I know where to put that one.
Hey, Scott. Well, I know we're a little bit late. We had some folks that thought we were at Social Security. So I'm just waiting on them to arrive.
If I had a kid, I
Yes, sir. I appreciate you guys bearing with us for just a second while we got everyone here, got everything set up. So welcome. We're looking forward to some productive talks today. What you have over in your hands at this point in time is I've given you sort of the agenda as we understood it coming into today. the last time we met, we received a number of counters from you guys, and so this our primary response today is to the mission today is to bring forward our counter proposals, talk through those individual items. So as you can see, we have responses to all 6 articles plus supplements. We'd also like to discuss, if you remember, we had a couple of MOUs that were outstanding. The UNICIG differentiated accountability MOUs. We need to get those processed as soon as possible. We also have a gifted endorsement MOU that we were intending to present the last time, but we ran out of time. And then, of course, touching on the teacher transfer process MOU as well, just to make sure that we're, keeping that front of mind as we move forward. I know that that's not been something that we've discussed in depth, but I really would just like, I sent you the copies of the MOUs earlier in the week, so you'd have a chance to look them over, so that you might ask any questions that you have related to them. We can get those resolved so that we can hopefully get those signed and implemented as quickly as possible. Do you guys have any items that you guys want to add into the agenda? We can do, if you guys have things that we can, don't want to necessarily dominate the whole meeting by giving all of our stuff about working you guys in.
So I think the LCS counter proposals would be a great place to start with MOUs, and then what we'd like to do is caucus and then come back, and if there is anything to present at that time, we would present it at that time.
Okay. Well, sounds good. So I guess we'll just jump right in with our counter proposal to Article 7. So pass it. And just as housekeeping, the green items, the things that we've agreed to thus far, I'm just going to skip over if that's okay as we go through. Unless, of course, unless you have some sort of an issue that you want to bring up related to one of those green items as we go through.
If we need to, we'll bring it back after our caucus.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay, so we're going to start with 7.01 A1, the standard workday, where you guys proposed language that said that the beginning and ending time of the employee workday shall provide no less than 30 minutes before or after the academic day. And so in this circumstance, we really feel like to nail that down 30 minutes before and after limits the level of flexibility that the school site has to be able to manage their duty schedules and all of the things that they have going on during the day. We have lots of schools where, if you go back and you remember our conversations around the additional planning time that was added last year, that were very, very, very close with regard to the planning time availability, because they're small schools where they really depended on the staff to be able to watch the kids in the morning to make sure individuals aren't injured or things along those lines. So to take that away, to take away that flexibility would be detrimental to our operation. So we feel like the current contract language in this situation would be best. All right. Then we're going to go to 7.01A3. And this is where you guys have the union proposed that the employee shall receive a duty-free lunch period no less than 25 consecutive minutes. And so given the demands on our time throughout the workday, and the fact that we're constantly being subjected to mandates from the State Department of Education, that tell us exactly how much time we need to spend on certain aspects of instruction. We really feel like it's imperative that we keep the current language, which is that the employees receive a duty-free lunch that is equal to the students' lunch in the building that they're working in. Just because, at this point in time, we can't project for the future in terms of what those additional mandates will be coming down the line. It makes it extremely difficult to schedule if we have a set block of time and that we've got to meet every single day. So now we're moving on to 7.01 A3. I guess the little I. This is a new addition to the language for us, and it born out of our conversations last week. What we would like to do is just this is really cleanup language to memorialize and clearly articulate the intent of this alternative teacher compensatory leave time. One of the things that was brought forward was that some people thought it might be able to be misconstrued what we're referring to when we say it, and so the point is to be very explicit in terms of the alternative teacher compensatory leave. So basically, what we're proposing is alternative teacher compensatory leave shall not expire and will transfer from site to site. However, instead of saying it, we say the accrual of alternative teacher compensatory leave shall be limited to no more than 24 hours at any given time, will not be paid out upon termination, resignation, or retirement, and is bound by the limitations 16. Can't read there. Regarding the amount of time that may be taken. Okay. Moving on to the next, in section 2, you guys or the union proposed special area periods shall generally be scheduled for no less than 45 minutes per period. However, individual class periods may be adjusted as necessary to meet the needs. Okay, so we're basically cutting that out, cutting out the 45-minute standard for special area, because once again, it creates a hardship on us in terms of scheduling and having flexibility throughout the day to manage those mandates. Moving forward to 3, the union proposed that alternative compensatory time would be assigned, and we have maintained that alternative compensatory time is intended for the use as conciliation for lost planning time during the week, and that's the only reason that we have ever agreed to utilize the alternative compensatory time. At this point in time, we do not support the expansion of the use of the alternative compensatory time. We have, however, addressed your concerns in other parts related to compensatory time in a way that I think is at least responsive to the concerns that you got. The union proposes in 7.01 employee work week that we add that on the day before the scheduled holiday, the employee duty day shall end at the close of the day. Non-school based employees may leave 30 minutes before the end of the regular day, and that employees of our unit
may work remotely on non-student contact days upon mutual agreement with his or her administrator. And request shall not be unreasonably denied. The administrator must provide these. Neither of these things are practices that we feel like we can do long term at this point. Specifically, the main issue that exists there is that we don't currently have a work from home policy or telecommuting policy. As we work to develop that kind of policy, as you guys know, that there has been some discussion of the development of that policy. We would, obviously be free to discuss these things in the future in alignment with that policy once the board has approved a work from home / telecommuting policy. But at this point, we don't have that leeway with the So, to 702 C1. The union in this article, the union proposed that those individuals that are assigned to professional duty would perform that duty at their hourly rate of pay unless excluded by 7.04A4. And our counter to this is that we're unable to accept that language at this point in time. We prefer current contract language. Duties are part of the people's obligations. Pressure. Moving on to 7.03 in-service activities. 7.03B. The union had proposed that we eliminate when funding is available through grants and special entitlement training. We eliminate that sentence altogether. And we do not feel like it would be a wise decision to do that. We do not always have funding available through grants. And so it would create a huge budget issue for us if at times, if we always had to pay for things that may fall under professional duties. However, we are willing to adjust the pay that employees are receiving for these trainings that they're attending, up to $25 an hour for employees and $30 per hour for those that are teaching those classes. In 7.03B, we are counter proposing. Basically, what we're saying is 7.5 hours, so no more than 7.5 hours of the district-wide in-service as authorized by the superintendent shall be held on a designated planning days. Okay, so it's basically opening up some flexibility to that half day increments. We're not in agreement at this point in time with limiting that to only at the beginning of the year. I think it's important that we have the ability to do in-service at different times of year, especially the case given the fact that there are limitations on the amount of time that may be spent for in-service activities during that pre-planning time period. And so having flexibility to do this during other times of the year, planning days and other times of the year. And then the addition of 7.04, all compensatory time shall be treated as alternative compensatory times. Again, that's something that we're able to do at this point in time. 7.04, you had proposed that we eliminate the parent-teacher organization meetings from the items in 7.04 that would be considered part of the employee's responsibilities. So we're proposing current contract language in 7.04 B2. This is where we are proposing a change that would address your concerns that you expressed at the last meeting. So we're saying that all unused compensatory time earned, except for alternative teacher compensatory leave, as outlined in 7.013B(I), will expire 1 calendar year from the date that the time was earned, provided the teacher is reassigned at the same school in the subsequent year. If an employee is not appointed at the same school in the subsequent school year, the compensatory time will elapse at the end of the contract year or upon resignation of the employee. So that's new language that we put forward in response to your concern dealing with teachers, especially when they earn the time late in the year that they don't have the ability to use it. So 7.05 meetings, faculty meetings. We've proposed some additional language really just to try and clarify this whole bit of language. Specifically, it's important to understand that we're comparing the same language. It didn't appear that it was comparing the same languages in I's and double I's and triple I. So the main issue is that here we're saying is employees who are unable to accommodate a faculty meeting, which extends beyond the standard or extended workday by more than 1/2 hour. I mean, basically there was some confusion. What we're trying to do is clarify and clean up that language so that we understand exactly, what bar we need to surpass. Clearly, we've indicated in the green language that we feel like, if an employee needs to leave for whatever reason, that it's reasonable that they be able to do that as long as they're, responsible for getting the information that they may have missed during that time. So that's just cleanup language. In 7.05B, the union had proposed our meeting shall be compensated at these regular rate. C, this is for district meetings. Again, this is one of those things that those district meetings are one of those items that considered professional duty, part of their responsibilities as salaried professionals. Next, I'm at 7.10 classroom supplies. Seven point 10 B, basically, we feel like saying a reasonable amount of time is much more acceptable standard, rather than having the arbitrary 3 days to respond. I feel like there's a lot of things going on. And, hurricanes and things like that come up. We shouldn't be stuck with a set 3 days when that's just an arbitrary number. What we're saying is a reasonable amount of time to response. In C altogether, we understand where you're coming from. However, specifically in accordance with Florida statute, that's 10.12.71. These funds, to quote this statute, funds received by classroom teachers do not reflect wages, hours, or terms and conditions of employment, and therefore are not subject to collective bargaining. Any classroom teacher may just decline receipt of or return the fund without explanation or cause, right? So because by statute, this item is not subject to collective bargaining, we are not in agreement with accepting your item. Seven point one four related to the ESC days and the district's proposal that the teacher would be allowed to stack those days as necessary throughout the year. We have discussed that and really feel like it becomes burdensome at that time. School operations for teachers to stack the days. They're intended to ensure that the teacher has the opportunity in each 9 weeks has some opportunity to deal with the everyday issues that they've got to deal with related to ESE. It's much more difficult to deal with those issues at the school level if you're stacking. So as it relates, we feel like the current contract language was negotiated in a way that was fair to both sides in terms of administration, administering those days off, but also giving those ESE teachers days that they have to work on these various ESE IEPs and full classes. In 7.16, you guys or the union has proposed once again that a teacher may work remotely on non-student contact days upon mutual agreement with his administrator. For a question unreasonably to be denied, the administrator must provide a reason. So once again, that is an issue at this point in time because we do not have. So, should we develop a work from home policy, which we're in the process of doing right now, we will be more than happy to have conversations with you about how that policy is premature at this point in time to this conversation because no policy exists. With regard to the 7.18 additional job duties due to staff vacancy, we have a proposal in the language. So in specific instances, prompted by extended absence or staff vacancy in a student serving role, teachers may be assigned to manage additional duties and or responsibilities beyond the timeframes of their assigned workday. Employees who are assigned in such instances by their site administrator shall be compensated for additional work performed outside the assigned workday in accordance with Article 21.01, provided the work performed is directly related to the additional duties or responsibilities assigned. Nothing in this provision shall limit the right of the site administrator to assign duties and responsibilities as needed during the teacher's assigned workday within the limitations established in the. So this is a pretty big departure from what we past. It's fair to compensate those individuals on a monthly basis for additional work that they're doing when they're assisting with the roles of an absent coworker or vacancy. However, it can't be during the normal week. That's the primary. In terms of splitting classes, you guys have proposed provisions related to splitting classes, and at this point in time, we feel like our contract language is most appropriate. We are willing to consider separately adopting procedures within our operations to prohibit the splitting of classes. to the greatest extent possible, except for in the most bona fide of emergencies to prevent this from happening. We feel like we've already sent that message across the district. There are times now that we do, split classes, but it's greatly reduced from what it used to be. And, in terms of staying that course, we feel like rather than developing method to pay for splitting classes in a way that is not easily projected, nor particularly beneficial. That from our perspective, operationally, it is better to just continue with the course that do not recommend the splitting classes. Move forward.
Outside of not easily projected, what was the other comment you made?
I mean, it's just it's not easily projected in terms of the financial impact that the proposed language has, which is the primary reason. In addition, the union has repeatedly complained in the past about the practice of splitting classes, and advised against, and so that's why we've taken the position, quite honestly, that we have. That splitting classes is not something that we support. All right, that's 7. We obviously are open to any counters that you guys have, and I think that, as you can see, we have accepted a number of your proposals with slight modification, and feel like the progress made on that front would be beneficial for both the union and the student. Any questions?
We'll wait until we call this.
Okay. So now we've got our counter proposals to 8, and essentially where we stand on our counter proposals to 8 is that we feel like the changes that have been proposed in 8 would cause undue hardship on operations, particularly at the high school level. As we look at 8.01, changing from identical to comparable courses could really expand and create hardship with regard to the way that we're scheduling classes and assigning teachers across the board. So the agreed to language is what we'd like to stick to, which is identical. Additionally, you guys have proposed that we eliminate 8.02 language that spoke to the number of preps for those teachers that use other instructional delivery models such as computerized instruction. You guys requested as part of cleanup that it would go to the section. We do not feel like that would be appropriate. It's appropriately placed where it is right now, as it's speaking to the preps that an individual is allowed. This section specifically addresses those issues. We feel like while there is a section on the virtual school that that section addresses numerous things. This is specific to the preps. It's a current contract language as well. With regard to those on 8.6, we maintain the class size, class limitations imposed and associated costs are really next to impossible to project costs, and the potential for, you know, really severe financial implications associated with them are extreme based upon what's been proposed. We do wish to continue to dig into this matter, into this item, to try and determine a more feasible way to ensure that class size falls within the expectations. I can say that as a district, we, especially for those core classes, we are very much attuned with the number of folks that are in those classes. ESC perspective, particularly, we are very attuned. Kids that are in each class, the load that is being, I think that ESC has gone further than they ever have in the past to establish caseload limits internally, so that we can ultimately, you know, get to a point where these caseloads are really bad. As we go through now with what's been proposed, the financial implications of such that it's really untenable. We cannot afford to do this, and should fund all of the other things that we have as part of our you guys, specifically our compensation proposal, but also in the language that I find. So we're going to continue to work on this item, but we don't have a solution at this point in time. We're ready for it. So that's it. So as we work through, so I'd just like to point out, as we work through the last counter proposal, we really sort of recognize that this section was not at all doing what it was intended to really do, which was to lay out a process that was easily followed related to the management of notification and employee rights, as well as discipline. And so what we have done here is proposed really a complete reworking of the language intent. We understand that this is a first glance, you know, what we think would be a good format. It's intended to open a discussion about the best way to administer this process and ensure that, you know, we have due process aligned between the district and the union for employees that are facing situations in which they may be subject to disciplinary action. There's a lot of the information that we're eliminating, you see eliminating on the first page, really is being put, it's basically just being moved, eliminating where it's at, and then moving it to a second section that is really specifically aimed outlining the disciplinary process. The first section is really aimed at the employee rights, right, and protections piece that speaks to, you know, the right to representation, the, the right to delay a meeting, those conversations that we had the last time we talked, and really talk through how do we best manage that piece. We are still, requesting that we remove the language that requires that the administrator advise the employee every single time that they have a conversation that may lead to potentially lead to disciplinary action, that they have a right to union representation. Because it's not required. Also because I think that, as we stated before, it is not always known when those things will occur. In the normal course of conversation, an administrator could become aware in the circumstance that they had no idea that they needed to advise the employee that they should have could have representation there, right? So in those instances, I think that's the primary concern. We may also be open in that situation to providing some sort of language. If we do not exclude this piece altogether, which would be our preference, maybe having some language where it's recognized that if something like that occurs, and the intent of the conversation was not in any way, shape, or form associated with a disciplinary conversation, right? And they realize mid-conversation that this conversation is going in a way that they did not expect, that they can at that point in time say, hey, hold up, you have the right representation, so that we can cover those types of circumstances when they do arise. So for NB, that's what I was talking about. So 101B, as you can see, we're still placing that be advised that they have a right to union representation, be struck. When a request for such representation is made by the employee, no action shall be taken with respect to the employee until such representation is present, adding that in. And then striking the following, which employees, where it says, however, employees upon the request of the union may have access to representation during interviews with DCF. In instances, then we would say, however, in instances of sensitive safety matters, unrelated to safety and time, unrelated to safety or time sensitive matters, striking that piece out, which is just to make it readable, right? Removing that other piece to later in the would read, I would read, however, in instances involving insensitive or safety related matters, which must be immediately addressed to mitigate harm. If a union representative is not available for the initially scheduled conference/meeting, the conference/meeting shall be rescheduled within 24 hours or as soon as possible. We've added under no circumstances shall be and then we struck through the rescheduling shall and no circumstances we then have just a renumbering, a relettering, if you will. And then indeed there's a substantive change that we stricken where it says employees are entitled to fair and thorough investigation by the district of their administrator/supervisor. The wording that we want it to read is employees are entitled to fair and thorough investigation of facts associated with the alleged violation of policy prior to receiving progressive The next section is really, I would without going through, I mean, every sentence of, this proposal, what I would suggest is that you guys take a look at this, during the conference. Really what it's intended to do is just to outline the due process associated with the disciplinary process. It clarifies some items. Like I said before, this is new language. It's very closely aligned. Either the administrative discipline and other contracts. So it's a progressive and cumulative-based disciplinary approach. We embrace the idea of progressive discipline, but recognize that, just like in the previous contract, it would not be appropriate to always follow progressive discipline because in some instances, some offenses are much more egregious than others, right? And sometimes it's necessary to proceed to a higher level of discipline when appropriate. And so this language, as I indicated, is an attempt to better our process overall for the purposes of due process. All right. You're welcome to think about it. Some water. All right. So in 12, obviously we initially proposed to strike this language. And you guys, as a union, came back and said, no, you'd like to keep it. And so what we've attempted to do here is to really address the concern with language. We don't really have a problem with substitutes who've been in a position more than 20 days, receiving the same pay as the normal teacher if they meet the qualifications. That's the problem with us, practically, to be honest, is that in 99.9% of the cases nowadays, the sub does not meet the certification requirements for the position. That's the issue. So that's the issue that we run into. So what we've proposed here is that the language reads: substitutes who work in the same teaching position for 20 consecutive days and the established certification requirements and minimum qualifications for the teaching position / class that they're being assigned to teach shall temporarily be placed at the appropriate step of the regular employee salary schedule and will receive all benefits stated in this contract for the duration of the respective assignment period. Okay. And so I think that this language maintains the priority of the union that those individuals be subject to coverage if they go over 20 days. It also meets the district in that we are not in the position to put subs who do not, in most cases, do not meet the minimum degree requirements, for instance, a bachelor's degree, much less the certification requirements into a full. As we start the conversation in 16, this is The proposals in 16 were areas that we initially, you know, basically responded and said that they were unaffordable and within our current budget structure, not feasible. And so what we've done in coming back with a counter in this circumstance is really try to take into consideration, you know, parameters that we can set that would make these items affordable. Potentially, because especially 16.05, the continuity of classroom instruction piece, where it's the lead buyback piece. We've tried different ways to model and cost it, but it's really next to impossible to know what the financial impact will be. We recognize that it's potentially quite significant. However, we feel like if we put some parameters around the way that it's done and really utilize it in sort of a trial manner to determine the best way that we may be able to facilitate such a program, that we might be able to, you know, develop a more lasting agreement that allows for this kind of endeavor. Right, so what we've got here is basically a counter proposal for the continuity of classroom instruction proposal. So I'll read through it. Continuity of classroom instruction. To encourage and reward employees who assist in maintaining continuity of classroom instruction by utilizing 2 days or less of sick leave, the parties agree to the following incentive award. The implementation shall be conducted as a trial period spanning the 25-26 and 26-27 contract years. Provided program outcomes have favorable impacts on continuity of instruction or fiscally sustainable, the program will be negotiated on a more continuing basis as part of the 27-28 collective. Employees who utilize 2 sick leave days or less for the respective school year shall, upon request, receive payment for a designated number of sick leave days earned and unused in the respective school year. The eligibility criteria for participation are as follows. The individual must have used 2 days or fewer sick days for the respective school year. They must have been continuously employed with Leon County School District for a minimum of 15 years. An employee must have a minimum of 60 days of accumulated sick leave remaining after the payment of their unused sick leave under this section. Parameters for payment are as follows. The payment of this incentive shall be paid to eligible employees no later than September 1st following the school year in which the employee qualified for the incentive pay. 2. For purposes of this section, sick leave shall be defined pursuant to Florida Statute Section 101261. Days for which such award payment is received shall be deducted from the accumulated sick leave balance. 3. The district may reduce the number of days for which an individual may receive payment based upon budgetary constraints. Any reduction in force will apply to all applicants requesting payment for the respective school year and shall be announced as soon as practical. 4. An employee who accepts payment for accrued sick leave shall no longer be eligible to participate in the employee sick leave pool for the remainder of their employment within Leon County Schools. 5. Payment will be distributed at a rate of 60% of the employee's base rate of pay for 7.5 hours for each respective day requested. So these are parameters that we feel like will enable us to determine an appropriate cost structure for this benefit. At the end of the day, it may very well be that it's cost prohibitive to do this kind of a program. Ultimately, individuals, as you know, individuals who have been employed with us and retire with us paid for that sick leave. That's the reason why we've you know, what we've tried to link it to is individuals with a very high likelihood who will be retiring with us. Otherwise, we're paying a lot of money that we otherwise would not have budgeted. So we're welcome to. We'll hear any counters that you guys have, or ideas that you may have to make this program a feasible program moving forward. But the idea is to try and set something up so that we can try this out. Okay. In 16.06, the granting of sick leave. Basically, we're going with kind of contract language. Striking through the last bit that says sick leave shall not be denied if substitute cannot be. In 16.06B, we have those items that we've already agreed to. Otherwise, contract language. C remains as number. We have 16.14 bereavement leave, where we've granted the additional days. So it's 5 days for bereavement leave. We have 16.21. As we maintain all along, this is language that we feel like is necessary, and we are proposing to keep it as current. All right, so 16.26, and this is a big deal. So if you flip to the back, you can see our attempt at costing this. Can I give you this? So within the teacher unit, for the last 2 years, we've had 35 and 36 maternity leaves for individuals during the regular school year. In addition, male representation among teachers is right around 20%. Because of the impact of a paid benefit like paid parental leave, we do feel like it would be appropriate to offer parental leave to both male employees and female employees if it's going to be implemented. It's an 8-week paid benefit. We feel like we would face quite a bit of recourse if we did not offer the benefits to fathers as well as expected mothers. So in addition, we've costed this at about the average salary being right around $50,000 with benefits, projected annual participation being 43 people. So that is basically taking the 36 people on average right now per year that have done it in the last 2 years. 20% of that number is 7, add that to the 36, and you got 43. The projected annual cost is $535,000. It is our position that if this is something that the LCTA really wants and feels like is appropriate, that this would come out of their compensation package for this year. Okay, so if you'd like to fund this, it would need to come out of your full benefits. As it is, we would also need to ensure that the parameters are set so that it can be afforded on a go-forward basis. Okay, so I'll go through here and hit on the parameters that we've outlined for the conversation related to paid parental leave. So certified employees, teachers, and others who have been continuously employed with the Leon County School District for at least 5 years and have actively worked at least 1,250 hours over the last 12 months will be granted a leave of absence with pay for 8 consecutive work weeks upon documentation of the birth or stillbirth of the employee child, or because of the placement of a child with the employee for adoption, and upon the employee giving 30 days notice to the principal of the school. Where employed or to the employee's immediate supervisor. All these colors. B, if the employee learns in the birth or adoption less than 30 days in advance, the employee shall give notice as soon as reasonably possible. For the purpose of calculating service anniversary dates, years of experience, and eligibility criteria for parental leave, this absence from work is considered a leave of absence and shall not count as time worked. Leave used as an employee pursuant to this policy will not be charged to sick, annual, or other leave the employee may have accumulated. Leave granted pursuant to this section will count towards the Teachers Family and Medical Leave Act entitlement. C, an employee must not be granted more than 8 consecutive work weeks paid leave under this article in any given contract year. Parental leave must be continuous and may not be divided for use throughout the contract year. Employees meeting the established criteria are eligible to receive paid parental leave on only 2 separate occasions throughout the cumulative employment with the County schools. This provision has no impact on the number of times an individual may receive unpaid parental leave in accordance with the Medical Leave Act. Both parents are LCS employees. The 2 employees together shall have a total of 8 weeks of paid parental leave, which may be split and run consecutively or concurrently. And then D, leave granted pursuant to this article shall only be applicable to contracted work days and shall in no event extend beyond the end of the 196-day contracted work year or cause the employee to be paid in excess of the total salary allotted to be paid in the contract year. Paid leave under this article shall be paid at 100% of the employee's hourly rate of pay for the standard workday as established in 7.1A C1. Go to the parameters that we felt like would enable us to be able to facilitate this type of a program and it is fiscally sound on a move forward basis. With regard to your, and I recognize that this is a counter to the previous proposed parental leave language. You did something language in which replaced the parental leave proposal with an LCTA proposal for employee childcare. And unfortunately, because of the way that those programs are funded, we do not feel like we could extend this benefit to employees at this point in time for all employees to receive free childcare or after-school care at our schools.
I'm sorry, when you say all employees, what do you
Well, all employees within your unit, but it also would then extend to, we do it for you guys.
our contract is for instructional, so
I understand.
there's a difference.
I understand. And you know, I think that I can operate within that parameter as well and say that, you know, as it relates to even with just teachers, because all of these programs, these extended day programs and whatnot are self-funded, you know, and they also provide an important benefit to our communities to offer that service to all of our teachers, as well as others as well that would inevitably be included, would not, you know, make it a sustainable endeavor. You know, we would not be able to keep our doors open in those after-school programs with with that kind of a hit. Right. So we are going to respond and say, we do not agree. And then finally, 16.27 related to family care leave. Unfortunately, this is not something that we have the leeway to negotiate. The types of leave that are allowable are set by statute. And so even if we wanted to, we wouldn't be within the parameters outlined by Florida law to negotiate family care leave with the LCTA. So we have to respectfully as well. '21 is something that we have not brought forward up until now. This is really in response to a specific request from the LCTA earlier in the year. Obviously, if you guys don't want to include it, then we won't. But at the time, we indicated that we would do something to address that issue moving forward. This is specifically related to 21.1 insurance programs. This is related to 2-employee family coverage and what happens with that coverage when an employee passes away. Okay. So it would read, when an employee covered under 2-employee family coverage passes away, their surviving employee / spouse will be eligible to continue to pay the 2-employee family premium for the remainder of the plan year, plus 1 additional plan year, as long as the plan is still considered a family plan. If the plan becomes a 2-person plan, the premium will change to the 2-person premium.
Point of clarification, LCTA never brought this forward in any way, shape, or form, so I'm just curious as to where it's coming
Me and
from.
you had this conversation.
No, we've not dealt with anyone that's passed away.
Okay, I can remind you after the market session.
Okay, from all the notes that I have of all of our meetings, we have not had this conversation. So I'm not
Okay.
sure who the employee is, and if you happen to know who it is, then maybe that'll jog a memory, but
I'm not going to say this boy's name. I'm not going to say
Not
the
now,
boy's name.
but I'm
now,
just saying.
I mean, we've had this conversation, so I appreciate it. But if you don't want to do it, then that's fine. I mean,
No, I just want for the point of accuracy that I keep meticulous notes, and I know that we've not
it's not
discussed.
accurate. Why would I bring this up?
I don't know. That's what I'm asking the question.
We'll talk to you in the caucus about it.
Yeah.
After caucus. Yeah.
So, in addition, so we do have a response to the supplements. All right, so performing arts director, we continue to agree to 12%. We do not agree to offering schools with performing arts at 24% supplement. We are willing to extend the agriculture sponsor 4%, however, with an additional add-on for ongoing care of animals with significant time contribution of 2%. So they could get an addition up to 6%. As ag sponsor, if it's an ag program where not extended time contribution, then we feel like 4% is the appropriate. We continue to feel like it's appropriate that the ag competition sponsor be paid as part of our academic coach sponsor percentage. However, with that in mind, losing that we raised the academic coach sponsor percentage by 2% because we recognize that it covers a lot of different things. And if we're just, adding additional items in there, we're just splitting that up, or whatever you want to say, additional ways, right? So adding in an additional 2% to the academic coach at all levels. And then with regard to the new supplement, we can agree. We can agree to 4% for the STEM chair, 4% for the PBIS chair. We can agree to rename the site facilitator as shared decision-making council facilitator. We can agree to increasing the shared decision-making council facilitator to 4%. We do not agree at one time with the additional percentage for members of the and then as I discussed and touched on before we started, we have real closely near what you've done. We'd like to try and get this facilitated as soon as possible. We've also discussed the need for the differentiated accountability MOUs at the various schools. We proposed those back in June as well. Any issues that may be associated with those, so those we can get this updated. It just simply gives us the ability to provide an additional compensation for individuals at schools, as does the MOU for the gifted endorsements. Finally, teacher transfer process. That we've gone back and forth regarding this teacher transfer process for the last couple of years. And we'd like to have some discussion around if there is concern with the way that it's been administered for the last 2 years, as outlined in the MOU. That I'd like to be able to discuss that so that we can nail down the differences and get that implemented. So that really completes everything that we have.
Okay. We're gonna take copies, discuss your counter offers, and let everyone get a little rested as well. And, it's 2:17 right now. I think that, give us 20 minutes to go through everything. So 2:37 to touch base about whether or not we need a little bit more time.
You guys want to go to the computer lab?
We'll go to the computer lab, that's fine. Or you can stay here and actually.
There's, is that all five? She's got all five.
Oh, okay.
Should be a copy for each school. As well as the gifted one. And I think first things first, we'll just go ahead and address those. Sure. Yeah, so then.
All right, Miss Folks, we've got three. Table Palm, Fort Braden.
Yep.
Yeah, just signing that says.
Whoops. I did. We got a little bit of holy, sorry.
You want a second page so you can have one for yourself.
Yeah, if you sign yours, then we have to get our copies.
I gotta get them all time out there.
I know.
That's why he makes a big buck.
Exactly. First time.
No, it's always like a month these days.
Actually, you want to see a little bit. Cameras.
Yeah, right.
Right. Yeah, that's December. Where are you, Bill?
Oh, I'm sorry.
We gotta get Rocky time.
Oh, didn't do it right.
Doc is tight. You had one job, you had one job.
Okay. We're gonna go over the language and necessarily, it's difficult to provide counters right now because we don't have the printing capability and all that stuff. So I think when it comes down to, oh, you wanna do that, I want to gift it. Yeah. I mean, why would we not be?
I appreciate
You
that.
got, you got that, you do it right.
Another volunteer. I greatly appreciate it. It's paper fat today. I brought it. This hand.
It's about to be a
Go
rock,
through
paper,
that.
scissors.
Yeah. Hold tight, Benny.
Okay. So,
No holes.
not this time. Just shows my enthusiasm.
Yes, I'll take this. Thanks, sir. You get it. Yeah. So they keep that. Okay, we have to get them all signed. This is certainly appreciated. we can get this, get these. Payments
Thank you.
rolling. Okay. Thank you.
So there's a couple of things. We'll go through the contract language, ask for some clarifying questions where we need to. We'll start on Article 7. In terms of the shall provide no less than 30 minutes before, or after school, the academic day, what we just really want to make sure that is at these school sites where they have got reporting times of 45 minutes before the day and 15 minutes at the end of the day, that when there is, tardy buses and things along those lines, that it will be at the hourly rate of the employee from that point forward, because the intent was to make sure that we had time on both sides for transportation. So any additional duties that go beyond that day would have to then be compensated per Article 21. When we go to the part that talks about the lunch period, equal no less, understand that it will be duty-free and of equal length of the regular school day or the student's day, which means transition time will no longer be a part of anybody's lunch period. So if students are to be reporting to the lunchroom at a particular time, there'll have to be some way to get them to the lunch period, because teachers are supposed to have a lunch period equal to that of the students. Going on to page 2. The issue that we have in terms of the accrual of the alternative compensatory time, it's understandable. It's just different between the proper noun and, so it just says what it is. So not a big deal on that part. When it gets down to the special area period, there is concern. I guess, as you said, the union instead of us, of course. I think what we need to do is not the union, it's your employees. The concern of your employees when it comes to special area being less than 45 minutes is that many times it's those arts programs, the music, the art, the PE, and the things that help students give attention while they're in the classroom. Those are the things that students most of the time look forward to. If we are not necessarily designating a 45-minute time period, does that mean they go down to 25 minutes, 20 minutes? How low do we go? And those are things that students deserve. It's what's best for those kids in the long run, because those are the things that go ahead and create a well-rounded student and future member of our society. When we look down at in accordance with whatever this section is here, alternative compensatory time, we understand that the alternative has been taken out. Employee work week, as it pertains to the employee work week, the concern that we have right now when it comes to the holidays piece is that we know that there are times when the superintendent would release staff as students are dismissing when holidays were coming around. And for some reason, even though that there are other districts that have done this small minor thing to show that, we respect and value our employees, we understand the district does not want that in the contract at this time. Employees of the bargaining unit may work remotely. I think it's been 4 years that board member Jones has been asking for remote learning policy. And if a pandemic does not push us towards that policy, our curiosity is at what point do we have a policy? And then the other question is there any employee within the district that does work remotely at this time? I think furthermore, the question would be, you don't need a policy in place because contract language supersedes policy. And so we just need to make contract language that meets whatever it is that the desired part of the district is of the policy. So you do have the ability to come with a distance learning or work process in the contract right now. You're choosing not to. To say that the board needs to come up with a policy is basically saying that the board doesn't write the policy. The district writes the policy and provides it to the board. So that means the district hasn't provided a policy at this time. We're asking the district to consider having instead contract language because you don't need a policy for it. On to page 3, we on section C. As we discussed the last time at the table, there is a difference between a professional duty and a professional responsibility. Professional responsibilities are things that is not an additional duty that's assigned that goes beyond the contract time. And so when it is a duty, it is at its hourly rate. So if we take a look at professional duties, duties are assigned to employees.
I would refer you back to the contract language
I
and
understand.
show that in the contract, it refers to all of these as professional duties. So
Okay.
they're interchangeable. I get what you're saying, right? But in the context of our current contract, they're referred to as professional duties.
Professional duties are discussed, and they are also discussed at their hourly rate in Article 21. Professional responsibilities are only discussed within the context of compensatory time. Going to in-services, when funding is available through grants and special entitlements, our question is, when has funding never been available? Has there been a time where the district has required someone's employees shall be paid at their $20 in the past, where that money was not available and employees were not paid their $20? If that has not happened, then why do we need the caveat of when funding is available? Because funding has always been available.
The issue with that is, most of that is Title II.
Mhm.
It has been questioned by the legislature several times in the past. Because anytime they could say the Title II, where it was the majority of that.
But we do understand that is mandated in service, that is still now something that they've been directed to go to, and they're supposed to be paid at their hourly rate. So if you would prefer their hourly rate, we're all for it. So we ask you to reconsider that one again. When we come down to D, and they're talking about the 7.5 hours of district days, the reason why we put it at the beginning of the year is because there's oftentimes programs that are purchased and not implemented before the school year starts, and then we start riding a bicycle and start building it at the same time. We believe to be prepared for students, it's best to do it at the beginning of the year so that the training that's needed to be successful throughout the year is done in advance. Rather than reactionary, we become proactive. In terms of the all compensatory time being alternative compensatory time, the issue that we have with that is, as we discussed, is that your counter proposal is that if you are reappointed at a school, you would keep your compensatory time. But if you're not reappointed, then now you're treated different than other employees that were reappointed. That doesn't make much sense. The only thing we could think of was that if you're at a school where a principal basically shows that they appreciate the time and extra energy that people put into things, and they provide them with compensatory time, and that teacher transfers over to another said school site with 20 hours of compensatory time, that may make the other principal not so happy that that person has that compensatory time. If there's a different rationale for why theirs is treated differently, we would really like it when we get to an opportunity for you to speak, but we feel like, why are we treating them differently? And more importantly, the reason why we asked for the alternative compensatory time was to make sure that there was consistency among sites. So some sites weren't gaining 30 hours of compensatory time, where in another one, you didn't get any compensatory time. Why are we treating employees differently based off of site-based decision-making when all of those employees are employees of Leander County Schools? Doesn't make much sense in the eyes of the employees. In terms of the parental or parent-teacher organization meetings, the reason why we had eliminated it from the compensatory was because we felt that that is a valued thing of having employees a part of their parent-teacher organizations. And as we value things and the way Board Member Jones look at a person's checkbook to figure out what their priorities are, we really should be promoting these parent-teacher kind of communication. So why would we not give a supplement for this? It's not like it's a huge amount of money, and it does show some recognition of the promotion of parents and teachers working together. When we talk about will expire, we've already discussed this. It seems disparate to treat people differently just because they were non-reappointed. And is there a difference if someone's non-reappointed based off of performance, or non-reappointed because a position has been pulled because of a staffing plan? The person that has a highly effective or effective has no control over that. It's more the staffing plan of the district. We are appreciative of the meeting. 7.5. We appreciate the district's recognition of the way that this works, but back to the idea of not having 30 minutes at the beginning of the day and 30 minutes at the end of the day. That means that your buses are pulling out probably about what, 3:15. You're going to call a faculty meeting that will maybe start at 3:15, and that means 3:45. What are we doing? So if we were able to have 30 minutes in the front, 30 minutes in the back, you have a much better opportunity. And so how does this work? Required meetings shall be compensated at the employee's regular hourly rates. The district-wise, there is absolutely no limitation on the number of district meetings, and this is not a professional responsibility, as you've said. It is a professional duty, because a lot of these district meetings are not necessarily where every employee has to go to them. It's only specific employees with specific job duties. And that would mean that if I'm a civics teacher and I have to go to these, that's not, math teacher doesn't have to go to it. You know, DE teacher doesn't have to go to it. But now we're expecting some other people to go above and beyond what everyone else is doing and not compensate them for it. So it's reasonable without any limitations, and the fact that it is not a universal thing, making it a professional responsibility that individuals should be paid for such. On to the back side, we happen to have the portion about the emergency plans and the weather, and I think we can all agree that as we move forward, and as was presented at the school board meeting, having that plan and some transparency is going to be very helpful, because it's not going to be something that we don't deal with again. Classroom supplies. Okay. The interesting thing about this is that as the district, you've removed 3 working days to respond to this, but when it comes to the union's response to a meeting that may be disciplinary, you've included 3 days. So why would 3 days not be reasonable here? What happens if there's a hurricane during this disciplinary action? Are we going to change that to be in a reasonable time frame? So potentially we just do universal across the board, 3 days, and call it what it is. On the state statute for teacher classroom supply assistance, if the state, at the end of the day, it's not that we're asking anyone to infringe upon state statute. That is not what was requested. And there is nothing that limits us from going above and beyond what state statute is when it comes to recognizing people that work with students and the materials that they need to be successful working with those students. So it is reasonable that we would at least keep the last sentence of that to make sure that there would be some consistency in how we treat our employees. 714, when it comes to each 9 weeks, the question that we had is, as it comes down to, is 1 paid working administrative day each 9 weeks that school is in session. I guess what does in session mean? That school is in session. Okay, we'll go on to 716. Planning days
Yeah,
on
we
planning.
expected me to.
I don't know. We were trying to get some clarity. If you'd rather wait,
We'll do like
you'll
you
wait.
guys did.
Okay.
We'll wait.
Post planning, yes to B, and then as far as D, it goes back again. We're not limited when it comes to being able to do a remote working language within the contract. As far as D is concerned, there does not need to be a policy in place before that. We come to the next part when it comes to C. Yes, we've already agreed to that part. Thank you for the support in terms of administrative intervening. And then for 718, the primary concern that we have is that the budget is the budget and it accounts for all positions in the district. And if somebody is absent out of a position, the budget does account for compensating individuals for taking on additional responsibilities. The fact that this says, you know, in specific instances, we're not sure what specific instances that means and what it limits it to. So that verbiage is confusing to begin. Prompted by extended absenteeism or staff vacancy. So for example, what is extended? Is that, you know, a couple hours? Is that a couple of days, a couple of weeks? So that would mean that the expectation of the district of one of their educators is that, let's say, for example, Wallace isn't at work for a week and it's not considered to be an instance where the expectation is, you know, long enough, prompted an extended absenteeism. And now, Brett, you have to take on his job. And even though it's funded for you to go ahead and get additional compensation, it wouldn't happen. I'm not quite sure why we would do that if we know that someone is doing the job of two people at one time. Because again, that would go back to potentially what job duties are, but we need to get to that point as well. In splitting classes, this is really concerning to a lot of folks because regardless of the terminology that's been shared with administrators, the issue is, and I think you said that there was a number of para positions, like 56 or something along that line. About 50 para positions that are open, which limits coverages at our schools as well. Additionally, we know that there was a school at one elementary school for an entire week. They had to split students. We know that there is another elementary school because of the transfer of a third grade teacher that all the students were distributed among the other teachers and there's no substitute that was provided. So they've taken on additional responsibilities as well. And if you ask some of our other elementary school teachers, it still happens more frequently than you think. So we're concerned that there's going to be this, I don't know, sterner talk to administrators to get them not to do the things that you're telling them not to do, but then it would make more sense.
What kind of talk?
I don't know, whatever conversation was with principals.
I'm just trying to get the word.
Stern.
Oh,
more
Sterno, okay.
To go ahead and make it happen, but it's still happening. And so we believe contract language is the better way to deal with it because then it creates an expectation that everybody knows and it can be enforced.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So, I mean, so just to be clear, do you guys, do our employees want to have the ability to split classes freely if they're compensated, or do they want to not split classes? I mean, I'm sort of confused at this point in time. And I mean, I just like to understand what your primary goal here is.
Mm-hmm.
Is that to not have individual teachers take on additional students, or is it to have teachers be paid when they do take on additional students?
So the first one, not to have classes split, would be great. But in lieu of that, because it's still happening, then to be compensated. And maybe if it becomes such a burden to figure out how much we're compensating, maybe there'll be less splitting.
Sure. Well, I mean, it gets back to what we said was when you talk about having a more stern conversation. I mean, well, at this point in time, we've advised principals that this isn't a practice that we condone, right? Obviously, if we agreed to implement a policy or a procedure that said we're not going to split classes, then we would have additional conversations with our principals and say it's only in the most dire of circumstances, emergency circumstances, where we would split.
But
these
your
courses.
definition of
And so-
dire is different than somebody else's. So without an operational definition,
Absolutely right.
I think that's where
I agree.
the limiting
But I'm
piece.
saying, my point is, what I'm trying to understand is the goal to eliminate the splitting of classes, or is the goal to come up with some sort of methodology in which we can afford to split classes and utilize that as the preferred means of dealing with absence?
The question would be, can you guarantee that no classes will be split?
I think that what I was saying is in emergency situations where they have no other viable option, then you would have that. But I think that
And then
like
when
99% of the time, our goal would be that we're not splitting classes, we're dealing with another issue.
Correct. And in those emergency situations, then those individuals would get compensated because they've taken on additional students. And it doesn't have to be one of those things. Well, wouldn't you rather have them with a certified teacher than a substitute? Because that's been some of the argument in the past as well. The problem is that when we go ahead and we add on to these teachers and their obligations, they're the teacher of record of the students that they're serving right there. And so these are the things that, ultimately become part of the issue, right? If you can go ahead and say, we're not going to split, then you're not going to split.
I mean, our goal is to provide a solution
Yeah.
that is going to be effective.
Mhm.
I guess I would also have a question. Have you seen in your in your experience, have you seen other districts that are utilizing this method?
In terms of paying people for
Split
split classes?
And if so, which ones are they? I would just appreciate to know which ones so that
Right.
we can do a little bit of investigation to determine how.
So, yeah, if
think
I
you can get
remember
what's on.
correctly, the language was pulled from, well, actually, we pulled language and we gave it to you and you didn't like it, so we did this instead. So meaning that
May
it
not
would
be the
have the
exact same,
ability
right?
to proportionally do it to what would fit the needs of the situation, rather than being, if you receive 5 students this amount, then 6, like that part was told to us that it was too cumbersome. This one just basically says, proportionally, and you figure out the compensation for that.
If I may, I'd like to ask, what happens and how would that be applied? And this is just, I'm thinking out loud, when teachers within teams, and I come and say, I'm just thinking about a scenario. I need to leave early on Friday for a wedding.
We've had that discussion, that's not this situation.
Well, I'm trying to figure out when
Right.
does it apply and when it doesn't. That's gonna be my question.
Yeah.
When it's convenient and it works out for everyone. Or people who are really close in a teaming effort and they go, no, you leave early, we got them, it's Fun Friday. Or is it, my husband was just in an accident, I need to leave, it's cut off. Like, when do you apply the rule of when you pay and when you don't? When it's when it's considered to be an emergency, or when I need to leave for a doctor's appointment or a dental appointment and I'm not gonna take time, my principal's letting me go early as long as I can split my class up. So I wanna know how is that gonna be worked through?
When a sub is requested. So for example, we're on the same grade level. I know I'm gonna be out. I request a sub. No sub comes, split class. Now they should be paid for that time. There's a request because there's a known absence or there's a sickness that then gets taken care of.
And I think that answer sort of gets back to the caveat that I was saying before. When it's an emergency, that's for, as Ms. McAllister mentioned, the teacher gets a call and, there's been an emergency. They've got to leave immediately. And there's no other option but to split the classes. That's what we would say as an emergency. But if there's a normal sub situation where the person is putting in a sub, I can't imagine that we would ever say, let's just skip a sub and split them up. I mean, under the previous scenario where we said, I'm not saying
So I'm
You're
saying.
not saying it doesn't
I'm not-
happen.
I'm not saying that doesn't happen now, even though we direct, but if, under the scenario where we say, we're no longer splitting classes, an emergency is X, to Mr. McAllister's point, right? Don't split classes if there's notice of a sub. Get your sub or use sub less, but do what you need to do, but don't split classes. That's what the expectation would be.
Our concern has been that the subs, that we have principals that talk about, our sub pool is low. We're not granting substitutes for the last 9 weeks, which has happened.
I would argue that, I know that you contest this, but our sub pool is over 500 and we have a fill rate of over 88% last 5 weeks straight. So, I mean, I would not say that our sub pool is in dire condition at all. I do acknowledge that subs sometimes don't want to go to certain schools, but
Maybe I'll try. The sub budget is low. It does not allow us to get a substitute. Meaning
oh, you
that-
mean you're saying
at
in
the
a
specific
specific,
site.
like a specific site, they say, oh,
Right, which was part of the reason why we had requested for a centralized sub pool, because you may have 3 pregnancies this year, you may have 13. Flip flop next year, and that way it comes from whatever the average is for the district. But it was said that, how am I supposed to go ahead and assess our principals on their ability to monitor a budget? And at the end of the day, if it's about a budget that's limiting someone from getting the subs that's splitting a class, that's an issue. Yeah. Anything else? All right, going on to 8. When it comes to class size, the idea is that between identical and comparable, you had said that it's a hardship on the high schools and middle schools, undue hardship to them. So the issue then becomes, where does the hardship come in on the employee? Because now we don't want to recognize people with large class sizes, but we also don't want to make the class sizes equitable. So one of those 2 things has to give at some point in time, of making identical classes or comparable classes where you go ahead and have equitable workloads versus the other. You know, like, either are we going to recognize them in any way, shape, or form? Because by not addressing the disparity of the class sizes and by not compensating them for disparate class sizes, we're just basically ignoring the issue. We go to 8.2, and saying, we believe that we were in a previous one where it was discussed, and you had mentioned that those assigned to instructional delivery modes, such as computerized instruction, was said that it was in virtual school, which is why we made a proposal for it to move to virtual school. And so we're just wondering what the rationale of leaving that there is about.
it may apply to virtual school, but it also applies in other circumstances as well. And so that's why you would have it in this specific area to say, because it could be that you have computerized instruction, but you're not in virtual school.
Yeah.
So if for some reason virtual school is, goes away, or, at some point in time, then we're doing something different. We still have the methodology, and it needs to be, in the section that covers splitting of loads.
So is it then the idea that the district believes that Canvas is now something that is a virtual mode of instruction, and since everyone's using Chromebooks, that everybody can have more than 3 course preps?
There's no insidious motive here other than just keeping the fact that it's, if we have a computerized method,
right,
that it stay in this section, because it doesn't just apply to virtuals.
So then back to Pam's question, where else is this taking place?
At this point in time, it's not, but at some point in the future, it may.
to my knowledge. Is it happening through Griffith? I don't think it's happening any other place, but you know, as we've discussed before, once we agree to change the contract language, the only way that we can ever change it back is through mutual agreement.
Mhm.
And so, you know, as it stands, the current contract language fits our needs because in the future, there may be issues with we need to that this addresses. Maybe there may be other computerized methodologies beyond what's in virtual school in the future.
Mhm. So. Is this about CTE with digital design, coding, robotics and things?
It's about maintaining a contract that meets the needs of the district.
Okay, so, but what I'm hearing is it's maintaining contract language in a spot that there is no need for the district at this time. Correct?
It applies to virtual school in its current location.
The reason why we made virtual school its own section was to speak to virtual school because it was the MOU at the original.
Yes, sir, I understand.
So when it comes to the class size and the caseload issues, there's a lot of confusion on our side because what was said is that we don't have a cost. We can't project the costs, but we know that it will have an extreme impact and can't afford to do this. So class size limitation goes back again to the issue of comparable and identical courses. We can't make them reasonable across the board, but we also won't, I guess, address class size and its impact on the student learning environment at the end of the day. The idea is that we can put more and more students in these classes and our educators are so phenomenal, they're just gonna rise the occasion and every kid's gonna get exactly what they would get if class sizes were 22 students or 18 students. When it comes to the case loads and manageableness, you know, we're working on this. I guess we would like to know what you've worked on and what that means in terms of the employees to make them manageable caseloads. Because as it stands right now, the caseloads are such that the primary concern of employees is meeting fate and making sure that students get the services that they deserve. And so in order to do that, it has to be a reasonable work duty load for them to meet those students' needs, those student needs. And if there's nothing in the contract, there's nothing that limits what those caseloads could be, but yet you're saying you worked on something. So can that something be the counter proposal to our proposal and we just codify it? We currently know that we have a lot of students that are, you know, services, whether it's PT, that's now being done virtually, which is a burden on the ESE classrooms. And I think it's deaf and hard of hearing that we may have lost a couple of people as well. And every time that we have to go to some virtual component, it also increases on those ESE teachers because there has to be an aide or a teacher working with that student through the virtual component, which means now that is a person that was dedicated to other students that's being pulled. Our final thing about aid is just like the distance learning, if we've been working on this for 4 years, then what is the plan to actually get to a point where we've got something to show for the workshop groups that we've had at the end of the day? As far as Article 10, this is a lot. And we will go ahead and have to respond to it on the 23rd. Not to say that it's against it, it's just to make sure we go through all the ins and outs. We just want to make sure that we're taking a look at the changes that have taken place.
Yeah, so I just had two questions. So one was, I noticed you had removed the verbal warning from the official progression list, but it's still discussed as it's not part of the formal disciplinary action. So is there an understanding that step 0 is talking with the employee?
That's why it's not there.
We believe it should go without saying. We hope it goes without. Sometimes it has to be said. I know one department here to this day, they love a good counseling memo, and we're like, is this a letter of reprimand? What is this? Could you talk to the employee? Right.
I mean, our approach is to be reasonable and to create a system that's going to work. Right.
Right.
So we've tried to think.
And then there's this, at any point in time, an employee fails to cooperate. What does that mean? Is with the investigation or disciplinary process, including obligation to meet or check in as directed. So is it just literally singularly missing a meeting? Because I've had principals tell me I'm not cooperating them because I won't sign the 3-letter or the 3-question form that says, oh, I've been given 48 hours notice. And they're like, you're not cooperating, this meeting's over. It's happened to me with principals here. And I've had to explain to them that's not how this works. So that's why I'm concerned with that employee failing to what that would be.
Basically, I know the language in that section is referring to basically the individual being on admin leave with pay. So during that time period, they still have an obligation. You all have seen the letters to be available during business hours and to check their emails or whatever with contact from district staff. So want them just to be aware in those scenarios, those cases, that if they are not following that guidance that is included in those letters, that leave will be switched from administrative leave with pay to administrative leave without pay, since they're not accessible or participating with the investigation.
I'm concerned it's going to get complicated where you do that because they haven't responded to an email, but meanwhile the principal's still asking them for lesson plans and all this other stuff, and now you've switched into not getting paid, and apparently you're not going to switch them back, even if it was an honest mistake. So I don't know. This is just one area that I think we need to.
I think that we could definitely out the additional detail that would sort of lay out the sort of interpretation around that. Our thought process wasn't to say, oh, you know, you made a mistake, you didn't show up for a meeting, that's it, you're done. But I mean, you know, it would need to be more of a concerted, deliberate act of, you know, I'm not participating, I'm not cooperating with this investigation like that, right?
Okay.
Because as you know, there are times when people are on administrative leave for a significant period of time.
Right. And there's unique circumstances why individuals are placed on administrative leave with pay. Sometimes that there's no alternative for another placement of the individual that is doing the complaint. Right. So there's different reasons. So and usually that is communicated with correspondence that quite often you all are copied on as well.
Okay. Well, Scott said we'll follow up with, right, if we have more time to digest it.
But the goal is to collaboratively get to a point where better language in this area.
I know we need to do that.
Absolutely.
So we have paid leaves, Article 16. And in looking at this,
Skipping 12.
oh, the original, like, I can go back to 12, yeah, sure. Sorry. My stack wouldn't be the first. I'm moving. When it comes down to the part about the otherwise meet established certification requirements, minimum qualifications, will take into consideration. The recognition of the work of the substitutes is very important because we want to make sure that we keep continuity of instruction in the other classrooms as well. So, paid leave, we're taking a look at it. The issue that we had on paid leave is that there's not much other way to say this, as this is like a half attempt that's really an unusable thing. They're just really, we even have people on this side of the bargaining table that can't even utilize this based off of the requirements that have been put on this. So if the intent was to create continuity in classroom because we knew that younger teachers were taking more time, they're completely absent from this proposal. And less than 42% of the educators in the district even take advantage of this. So it doesn't meet continuity of instruction in the classroom at all. Because I can't say that we would stabilize 42% of our workforce, and that's going to be continuity of instruction. So with that, yeah, we will move on to the next piece. Requesting and granting sick leave. I think what we said was in our previous meetings that sick leave shall not be denied if the substitute cannot be secured. And so just for the good of the order of people that were listening before and that are here, that does not mean the district will not secure a sub or allow leave if someone can, if the site cannot secure a sub. They can still take their sick leave, their leave that they have on file. And that when it comes to getting the substitutes, that even though we're getting rid of not a member of the bargaining unit, administrator and designee does indicate that it is not a member of the bargaining. When we go to this bereavement leave, thank you for recognizing the needs that everyone has, especially when there's loss of family. When we get to verification of absences, we're disappointed because there's already a caveat from the contract that says that you can ask for any time after 3 absences if someone needs a doctor's note. This verification of absence basically is a pick and choose when you feel like someone's not being professional rather than treating everyone like they're professional. So that is unfortunate. When it comes to the paid parental leave, thank you for recognizing the importance of paid parental leave. But once again, is pretty much like the other. There are some limitations on this thing that are not sure how many people would be able to necessarily use it. We have some questions we still need to go over internally, but when it is said that if you'd like to pay for this, then take it out of the other monies that the district has talked about, it's as if you're telling us to pay for something that you're asking us to pay for the leave that we're asking you to provide to the employees, which doesn't make much sense in our mind, but you have your financial reasons for doing so. There are many employees that felt that the child care was something that would be appropriate because then they could, tend to their job duties. And as far as the idea that you can't afford it, that it's self-funded, was a little interesting, that it's self-funded by fees that people pay. So I'm not sure how it's not affordable at the end of the day. And that, it extends the service to our community, makes it sound like the service to the community supersedes the benefit it would be to employees and educators. So, as you said, in your ideas, it's not sustainable. And then in terms of family leave, we do know that there are individuals that have young children and elderly parents, and if anything, is probably better than the paid parental leave, but we'll discuss that internally and counter as we see fit. Health insurance program, as said, not necessarily a discussion that we had, but we will look at it and we will go ahead and counter or agree to it. We understand that the loss of a spouse during the school year is we hope nobody has to go through that in terms of family. And so we understand that it's something that probably should have been looked at a long time. When it comes to supplement proposals, I guess the issue really comes down to the supplement base is already below what it needs to be because it's not tied to the minimum teacher salary. And yet we still can't find money for some of these supplements that would be beneficial to our school sites. And when it comes down to like PTO coordinator, we just really don't. We're eliminating that from there. Our SAC coordinator has already been eliminated. So when it comes to trying to find additional opportunities for elementary, we've really done a limiting factor here on giving them those opportunities. You know, the math competition one, interestingly enough, was 2% and 4%, but then now has been countered at 2% for both middle school and high school and elementary, which means it's, I don't know, is that less than what you had originally said you'd do for middle and high school? What it seems like. So why we wouldn't just make it specifically to math competition, since we know that, you know, the individuals that are invested in this in our district are in the latter parts of their career. And as we've already seen, individuals that were really in the math departments and promoting Mini-Mu and Mu Alpha, that when they left, there was a drop off as well. So why we would not invest in something like that? Because I think there's also an MOU, but that was about the math competition part, but I don't know if there's a counter to that one. I just remember that they're talking about this one. And then we have magnet schools, but we don't want to increase the spending on our magnet schools, even though they have more arts departments. There's got to be a rationale to where every school would have the same percentage, not our art schools. Is there anything, I know that Scott has left, but is there any reason for why we wouldn't recognize the arts programs at our magnet schools with additional funding?
Yeah, so basically we're listening at this point in time. We'll respond.
Thanks. All right. And then in terms of the shared decision-making council, it seems to be that the person who runs the meeting gets something, but everyone that attends gets nothing. But that's like saying we're not going to compensate site leaders or building or team leaders or department chairs. So I think at the end of the day, we're asking for those folks to be recognized as well. I'll just close with this. We need a salary counter proposal from the district to represent what, if the paid parental leave is a part of it, or if the paid parental leave is not a part of it, because when it comes to having a conversation with the instructional bargaining unit, we know what the money value was of our proposal for each level. Like if you were at 15 years of service, it would be this. At 30 years of service, it would be this. And so they have nothing to compare what your counter is, because it's just 4 million. And so we're asking for a counter proposal on the salary portion so that we can give them a comparable to what it is that it would look like from the district standpoint. The idea that we would do the work for you, that we would rather you go ahead and give us your preferences as according to the superintendent, so that we know what we can go ahead and look at and compare apples and the apples.
I don't know that it's a counter proposal. We've indicated that our proposal is $4 million. We've indicated that you would like a
counter proposal.
A proposal that is set up differently, that would incorporate you guys deferring that portion of the money towards the ability.
Whatever your counter proposal would
be.
be. We just need a counter proposal to be able to go ahead and bring back to our bargaining unit.
I mean, we can do that. We've indicated how much we have considered that, and as part of the negotiation process, we can narrow that number down, right? I think part of it is where we land with regard to the parameters of the deal for parental impacts the total cost. So
Those are your choices. We're just asking for a counter proposal. If it includes parental leave, it does. If it doesn't include parental leave, it doesn't. It's just whatever your counter is.
what I'm saying is that the parameters of the agreement, which isn't a choice of mine or yours, it's a negotiated deal, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Will impact what the total cost is. And so what we've outlined for you is that it would cost $535, as it currently stands. However, as we adjust those parameters, it may go down. And so, yeah, I think that I can definitely put together but just understand that, as we pull levers, make changes, it impacts that number.
Understood. We
Yeah.
just need a counter proposal for our salary.
Absolutely. All right. So I guess at this point in time, it'd probably be close enough to schedule time. Go ahead and break. We'll meet and come back with additional responses to your inquiries at our next meeting. Continue to work towards narrowing down some of these spaces, right? So get to a point where we have agreement.
You did receive the email, just making sure that, the 3 to 5 o'clock, we've got folks that don't get off at school.
We'll nail down.
So 5 to 7 doesn't work?
Don't think it does.
Okay.
We've got people on our team that have conflicts at that time. I mean, we can work through figure out a different time to meet if the 1 to 4 doesn't work.
Yeah, I think given the fact that people gave up constructional time already today, our position is 5 p.m., whichever day works. If it's not the 23rd, if it's the 22nd, the 21st, whatever date it is.
Yeah, unfortunately, we've got board meetings on both Monday and Tuesday, so it'll have to be after.
4th, 25th.
Yeah. I mean, the bottom line is we're going to meet again soon.
Mhm.
We'll get the date on the schedule. At this point in time, it's one of those things where we're going to continue to work towards getting this solved. We would prefer to meet at our normal time, but understand your position, and we'll work with you to get it rescheduled.
So,
I mean, it was somewhat of when we originally scheduled back to back, that's sort of out of the norm for how we would normally, we generally have at least 2 weeks between the sessions, but that's not a major play here in what's going on. I think that we just have conflict with that particular time. We also have board meetings that week, but on the agenda reviews on Monday, we have board meeting on Tuesday that conflict on earlier days. So the bottom line is we'll schedule a time that is going to get us back to the table quickly and continue to work.
So I guess, just so that we hear correctly, that the 23rd no longer is available at 5 p.m. because there are some individuals that can't make the meeting.
Yes, we have conflicts at that time for members of our team. Okay, and so we can still do, the regularly scheduled time that we had set aside for this meeting, if you would like to do that. If you want to reschedule, I'll find as soon as possible, find a date, that we can get a phone call. Gotcha. I mean, there's no issue. there's no issue. other
Okay,
than-
I just knew that there was QC, and that's the reason why we're trying to make sure we got back to back and try to get a couple of dates in there. And then when it comes to where we can't meet at 5 PM, which is mostly the time that we normally would meet at, then it's, I mean, I guess we would really like to know what's the limiting factor? And is the superintendent eager to maybe request that you convene a smaller group to go ahead and continue to do the work?
I'll get back with you on additional times that we might be able to do this. I mean, at this point in time, I don't see a point in getting to a smaller group. We're still working through the foundation of the language proposals. We've not received a counter proposal from you on the money side. So, see any reason we would.
We don't need to give you a counter proposal because you haven't given us your first proposal. No, because we don't know what that means for each one of the employees. A proposal would break it down by each,
No,
what the salary
We-
increase would be.
we talked about this.
No,
we
you,
talked about
what you
this
talked
earlier.
about was that it's $4 million, $4 million. And so then what does that mean? We each get $4 million? I mean,
it's
for,
one would think that providing you as a group the flexibility to determine how you best want, and this is the way that we've done it in the last couple of years, right? So this differentiation is new to me, right? But we've said this is what we have. This is what we have. However, you guys want to split it up amongst your folks in terms of priority, we don't want to get into that.
Right.
Determine how you want to split it up.
because we've
Okay.
already told you how we want to divide it up, and it's $6.6 million.
We don't have 6 million.
Well, then you
So
don't, but
we have
that's why
$4
we
million.
need a counter.
Sure, we'll be happy to lay out how we recommend that you split your $4 million apart. But that's what it is. I mean, at the end of the day, you guys may not like it all how we recommend that you spend the money, which is why we said, tell us how you would like to split it up. And okay, and your point is taken. And so whenever I bring something back to the table, we'll also adjust that so that it gives some framework for how we would like to distribute. Okay?
Thank you.
I mean, and this is the first time that we've had this discussion about this particular issue. So I appreciate the information.
Anything else?
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Appreciate it, guys.